Hi, I'm Wisekal. In this video, we're talking about finger technique on the oboe. While we tend to focus on this a bit less than our flute and clarinet colleagues who, let's face it, have more notes to play, we do get technical passages in most of our sonatas, concertos, and etudes that will require a technique that allows us to play evenly and easily. The most important aspect of a good finger technique is a relaxed hand position. We want our fingers to rest lightly over the keys, not having to reach too far for anything. If I see that people have poor hand position, it tends to be that their knuckles are too close, too far away, or rotated at a funny angle to the oboe. If your knuckles like this are parallel to the oboe, you're going to have a hard time reaching these keys efficiently. If, however, your knuckles are relaxed, your fingers sort of draping down from your knuckles, you'll notice that my first finger knuckle is closer to the oboe than my last finger knuckle. You'll have a much better shot of being able to easily hit all of these keys. Another important aspect of a good technique is having a good warm-up to get those fingers going. I present an intermediate level warm-up in my oboe warm-ups video, which you should check out. But here I'm going to give you another example, which is an even more basic finger warm-up. You can use any scale as a basis. Today I'm going to use C major, and I'm going to go quarter note equals 88, about a medium tempo. The object of this warm-up is to get every finger going in the scale. So we've gone from low C to middle C, one octave. As you can tell from the warm-up, one of the most important fundamentals in a finger technique is knowing all of your scales and arpeggios. There are tons of books out there with different versions of scales and arpeggios, but my favorite version comes from the Vademecum of the Oboist. This very large book has 6 pages at the beginning of it that go through every scale and arpeggio in every key, as well as some broken arpeggios. Looking on page 5 at big number 3, we have the first page of the scales exercises. You might occasionally hear flute players practicing these too, since they were written by a flute player named Reichert. To save space on the page, the publisher gives us these exercises only going up about 1 octave from the bottom note. But on the oboe, sometimes we can start lower than written or end up higher than written. For example, the G major scale exercise only goes up to our middle G, but we have another G above that. So I play this exercise starting as written and then continuing up the next octave. Here's what the beginning of that would sound like. Looking at all of these pages with all of these notes, it's easy to get overwhelmed. Should I be playing all of these every day, you might ask yourself? To me, the answer is no. While it's important to know all of your scales and arpeggios, you only need to play them often enough to keep them in your finger memory. It's also important to practice them in such a way that they remain smooth and even. That takes us to the tips. There are tons of ways to optimize your technique on the oboe. You may already know some tools that work for you. For me, the 2 most powerful are uneven rhythms and note groupings. We can apply the uneven rhythms technique to any group of even notes, like all of the exercises in this book. They are written in this edition as all 16th notes. If we play them unevenly, that is, purposely make them longer or shorter, then after our fingers learn this jagged, more complex pattern, putting them back in an even row seems easy by comparison. I've written out here some basic ways of altering the rhythm. Here we have groups of 2, groups of 3, and groups of 4. In this Vademecum scale exercise, we have groups of 6, which means that we can divide them into 2 or into 3. The two most basic uneven rhythms, the most important thing you can learn from this video, are to take groups of 2 notes and make the first one long and then make the second one long. So instead of this for our G major exercise, we can instead play the first note of each group of 2 long. It'll sound like this. You'll notice I really exaggerated the unevenness of the rhythm. The first note was very long, the second note was very short. The more uneven you can make your uneven practice, the more even it will be when you put it back together. Let's hear what this sounds like now if I switch them around and put the short note on the downbeat. And now I'll play it as written again. I don't know if it sounds any better over the camera, but I can feel that my fingers already, even with one example in each direction, feel more fluid in the even version. After I've done my uneven work, and often I will do every single version of the uneven rhythms that you saw on the screen earlier, I will do my note groupings. I put groupings of notes in music not necessarily because I want to see how the phrase goes or because I want to outline the harmony better, but I'll put brackets or vertical lines between groups of notes that need separation because my fingers don't want to do it. In this Silvestrini etude that I'm learning for fun, there are quite a lot of notes that don't lie so easily under the fingers. You can see here on this page that I've separated groups of notes that would benefit from further breaking apart. For instance, in this section, you can see that I've actually put the bracket over the octave, where we change from the second octave down to the first octave. For some reason, my fingers got stuck in that place, and when I visualize the separation of the octaves, it helps me play them better. The way I practice groupings, by the way, is to always hold the last note of the group for a while, allow my brain to process the next group, and then play the next group. So for instance, in this section, I'll play something like this as I'm practicing. I always add note groups after I've done my uneven rhythms for a couple of reasons. Number one, no matter how many uneven rhythms we do, there are still some notes on the oboe that don't like to go together so easily, and we have, of course, some fingers that are weaker and slower than others. The other reason is that it helps visually divide the notes on the page, and as we're looking through, our brain sees not one note at a time, at least not after you've been playing for a while, but groups of notes. We see, oh yes, this group of notes is a C major scale, or this group of notes is a G major arpeggio. And adding the brackets helps to visually separate parts of the scale or parts of the arpeggio from notes that are not in the scale or not in the arpeggio. That way our brain only needs to think about one thing rather than each individual note as it goes by. With music that happens at any kind of speed, it's too fast for our brain to process each note, so we need to think of it in terms of groups. I hope you have found some of this helpful and that you're able to put some of it into practice in some of your technical music right away. Thank you for watching, and remember to hit subscribe for more content like this.